Hey guys, it's Hannah and I'm here today with my February wrap up and book haul. So today I'm going over my February books that I have read so far. We're going to start off with my stats for the month. So I have read 8 books total. I read 432 pages this month. I listened to 49 hours worth of audiobook. My average rating is 3.62 and I acquired 3 books this month. So the first book that I have physically read for the month was Giant Days Volume 14. This is the final volume of this series. You guys know how much I absolutely adore this. This is my comfort graphic novel and I'm very sad that I will no longer be looking forward to new editions or new volumes coming out, but I may do a reread because this is such a phenomenal graphic novel. It's just so comforting. So if you guys haven't heard me gush about this one over and over, this is the perfect graphic novel for people who are not into superhero things. This is more of a slice of life contemporary graphic novel looking after 3 grads who are very different. Well, they are uni students at the beginning of this and they are living together and it's just going through all of that in London, and it is such a good time. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. How could I not? I mean, I'm so sad that it's over, but it's such a nice graphic novel. I highly recommend picking up Giant Days, and the art illustrations are by John Ellison, which is absolutely fantastic. So highly recommend picking this one up. The next one that I picked up and read was The Lost Apothecary. I have actually finished this most recently, and this one was such a cool book that I was not expecting to read. This book came into the store and I wasn't like, I had no idea this was coming out. This is a debut novel and the cover intrigued me, and then I looked at the synopsis and I was like, I'm sold. So this entire book is all around a woman working in an apothecary that is hidden, and she sells poisons to help women take vengeance almost on the men who have wronged them in their lives. And it's all about like women like taking back their freedom and things like that. So it is a historical novel, but it is dual/triple POV. And it takes place in the present day when a woman who has gone through a very toxic relationship, and she's in a toxic relationship, goes malarking and finds this apothecary bottle, and she is intrigued by the story behind it because there is no name on it. It just shows a little bear. So she starts looking into this in London, and then it flashes back to the apothecary owner who is dispensing the poisons, and also a 12-year-old girl who gets wrapped up in this all as well. And it all is about how all of their lives are intertwining, and it's done really well, especially for a debut novel. I think this was done and written really well. The pacing was on point. It is definitely not a fast-paced type of book because it is a contemporary book, but you do have that mystery element to push it forward. I think the way that she split up the different chapters with the POVs really kept the story moving as well. I think the characters were, for the most part, pretty well developed. There is some side characters that were just thrown in that were not as well developed. That's why I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. But I really enjoyed it, and I haven't really read a lot of apothecary books, so if that sounds like something that you are interested in, go ahead and pick this one up because it was a fun time. And I really did like the characters, and I liked the women getting back vengeance upon the men who have wronged them in their lives. But this was a very interesting read that I was not expecting to pick up or like, and I'm really glad that I did because I had a lot of fun reading this one, and it was just a unique story. I also wanted to mention trigger warnings for The Lost Apothecary. There is sexual assault trigger warnings and depressive, suicidal thoughts in here as well. So if you are sensitive to that, maybe steer away from this one. It doesn't take place throughout the whole series, or the whole story, but it is pretty prevalent in the spots that it does show up in. Next up is a sort of trilogy that I read this month. I read A Touch of Darkness and A Touch of Ruin by Scarlett St. Clair, and along with that I also read A Game of Fate. So all 3 of these are by Scarlett St. Clair, but this is a TikTok sensation that I was like, okay, I'm gonna just pick this up on a whim. My library had the audiobooks with 0 wait. I was very surprised about that. And this is a Hades and Persephone retelling. Now this is a pretty direct Hades and Persephone retelling, that being as that they are Hades and Persephone in the books. There is gods in the books that they interact with, and there's like ogres and such on the mortal realm that are interacting with mortals. So this takes place with Persephone going to school at New Athens, and that is in the mortal realm, and she has to disguise her powers that she really hasn't tapped into. So she has her mother's magic, and her mother said you can be on or go to school in the mortal realm as long as you don't interact with the gods, especially Hades. So of course that's what she does. Hades runs a nightclub called Nevernight in the mortal realm, and that is where he makes these deals with mortals and other creatures alike, and he deals with all of that, and then they connect. I really enjoyed this. I thought this was such a fun read. I really liked the gods, like the different showing of the gods and different personalities and their powers. I really liked that aspect of this. This is an adult romance, so if you are not a fan of steamy scenes or raunchiness, stay away from this series because it is very explicit and a lot of times. Touch of Darkness there was some steamy scenes, but it wasn't as much. Touch of Ruin got a little more intense to the point where I was like cringing a lot, and then Game of Fate was just horrid. So Game of Fate is the Touch of Darkness, which is the first book, in Hades' perspective. So I like to say like this is the Grey of 50 Shades of Grey, or this is like the Edward perspective of Twilight. This was so bad. The way that you are in perspective from Hades, I recommend you do not pick up Game of Fate. If you enjoy Hades Persephone retellings, if you like raunchier romance books, go ahead, pick up Touch of Darkness and Touch of Ruin. They were a fun time. I ended up giving both of them about 4 out of 5 stars. I think I gave Touch of Ruin like 3.75, but Game of Fate I ended up giving a 2 stars. There was very little new information that was added to this book, and he was so much more crude and dislikable in Game of Fate than he was in either of those 2 books. So I was really let down with Game of Fate, and it's such a short book, but I almost DNF'd it so many times because of how cringeworthy it was. Let me know down below if you've read this series, if you've also read Game of Fate, and let me know what you guys think about those two too. The next book that I picked up was The Project by Courtney Summers. I knew this was about a cult. I didn't really know much more about it going into it. So this one is a YA thriller about a girl in a cult. Courtney Summers also wrote Sadie, which is one of my favorite YA thrillers of all time, if not my favorite. So I was really going into high hopes, but I didn't want to know too much about it. So Courtney Summers really does sisters really well, and she did it again with The Project. So it takes place with 2 sisters, and they are separated, and one is in this cult and the other one, who they no longer like speak to, the other one is interning at this newsletter type of situation where she wants to be an investigator, and so she takes it upon herself to investigate this cult, and things just go off the rails. Overall, I enjoyed this one. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. The thing that really curbed my enthusiasm for this book was that there is a lot of sermons that are included in this, which makes sense for a cult book, but if you are not religious like I am, this was a lot to take in for this whole time, because while she's investigating this, she's listening to these sermons, or she's, you hear these sermons, and it's just a lot, and it feels overwhelming at points. So I will say, like, be wary of going into this if that's something that does bother you. Next up, I picked up the Shelf Indulgence book club for February, and that was Shipped. I ended up rating this one about a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I would say this one is a good for fans of the Honeymooners. This one was a lot of fun. It has the competition aspect of it. It's got the hate to love aspect of it. The whole premise for this book is that there is a promotion at this travel company that the two main characters are working at, and they are trying to go head to head for this promotion. And so it is a travel company, so the idea is that they have to go on this very small cruise line and have to come up with a idea of getting their bookings up and being able to use social media to tie that in and things like that. So they are also, it's like close proximity trope as well, and that part is great. I really enjoyed the cruise line aspect. I'm definitely gonna look into more cruise romances because I think that will tick a lot of boxes. It'll be fast-paced, it'll be close proximity, which both of these are. This one was also a hate to love as well, and they've got that competition aspect of it. I really did enjoy this, but I wish, like, this could have been so much more, and so that's why it's only getting a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it was really a jumping off point, but I think that the story could have brought further, and there was some story lines that felt too heavy for this book with it not being explored. It was just thrown in there, and I understand if the author is trying to do a sister series of expanding it literally on the sister in this book, but I thought that that was not done very well in my opinion. And the last book that I picked up was The X-Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon, and I ended up giving this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved this one so much. So this one is all about two people at a podcast, and this is another romance, and it's another hate to love romance that also takes place in Pacific Northwest, which was just beautiful. I love that. So we got to see stuff in like the Seattle area and stuff, and that's what it plays off of. So this one has, they're trying to save their station. Their station is dying at this radio show. There is this new news reporter that thinks he knows all about everything about a news radio show. And then we have our seasoned female character who has worked there for like 14 years or something, or 10 years. And she's never been on the air. She's always been a producer. And so they are spitballing and trying to come up with good ideas that are going to save the station, and offhandedly she says, what if we get two exes giving like love advice on what went wrong as a radio show? And that spark takes off from there, but they don't have any exes, so they decide to undergo and pretend like these two characters who already bicker like they're exes, pretend that they are exes on the air and give advice. And of course there is like fake dating obviously played in there, and hate to love, and there's so much chemistry between these two characters. There also is a Jewish representation because the female character is Jewish, and there is also Asian representation because he is Korean American. So that is also tied in there too, that it was really nice to see. But overall this was so good. If you were looking for like a saucy, fighty, just a really good spark chemistry of sass and banter back and forth, and like working together but also keeping things secret, like it ticks so many boxes. I highly recommend checking it out. I really wanted, like as soon as I finished the audiobook, I wanted to start the audiobook back over because it was that good. Let me know down below if you guys have picked up any of these, and let me know what you think, and let me know what you are looking forward to. Oh, and the 3 books that I have picked up for in the month of February. Obviously, this is our Shelf Indulgence book club pick for our March, which we'll be doing our live show at the first week of April on my channel. Very much looking forward to this. Of course, I had to pick this one up. And then I also just grabbed these ones from work. I don't know a ton about them because these were just arcs sent to my work. I Am the Rage. I've heard really good things about this poetry book, and I'm pretty excited to pick up this one. And then there's also Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. I had no idea that Sally Thorne was writing a book. This one comes out in April. And this one I think is like a retirement home setting, which I've never seen, I don't believe. So I picked these ones up on a whim, kind of going in blind, but looking forward to these ones too. That is it for my February wrap up, and stay tuned for my February TBR. Thank you for watching. Bye.